Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. It's a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel filling in for Chris Schmidt today, joined by the pride of Fairbury, and I guess you call him the pride of Denver as well. Bill Doleman joining us here on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Bill's had a couple of weeks off, but he is back in with me today. We had to, Bill, like the couple weeks off. Chris was getting a little nervous about your pay demands, so as a result, we had to give you a couple weeks off. But Bill Doleman back with us here today as we got a lot for you. Remember, you can always call the show 402-466-3776. It's 402-466-ESPN or 800-825-5865. Send us a tweet at Herbal Essences for me, Elijah Herbel, and at Bill Doleman for Bill Doleman. You get that right, Bill? At Bill Doleman?
Yeah, I think I just basically retweet stuff so I don't get in trouble. So, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, okay.
That's as creative as I could get with my Twitter handle was Bill Doleman. Not to be confused with the UFO hunter in New Mexico who is like the world's foremost Area 51 expert. That's another Bill Doleman, but maybe he'd be more interesting, too.
Is that true? Oh, it is. Dr. Bill Doleman.
Yeah.
How about that? Wow,
I don't know what his Twitter handle is, Space Cadet or something, but yeah.
He calls himself an archaeologist, and he claims he's found metallic debris in Roswell that he believes to be extraterrestrial. Wow, amazing what a quick Google search can do. Well, not that Bill Doleman. That'd be a good Bill Doleman to get one of these Fridays. See if he's available.
Yeah. I could take a Friday off, too, like Schmitty.
Well, we'll get the other Bill Doleman in, just really confuse everyone sitting at home and just talk UFOs for 20 minutes. That'd be fun. But the other Bill Doleman, the pride of Fairbury Bill Doleman, with us here today, as we got a lot for you. Got to talk some conference expansion. Is the sky blue? We're going to talk conference expansion. That's going to be our topic. You got to think in the next weeks, months, years. That's going to be where college football is. So we'll get into that a little bit today. We'll have Jacob Padilla joining us here in about 20 minutes. Also, we'll have some thoughts about the new Husker offense. And to kick off hour two, we will have Rick Kaczenski joining us. And Schmidt and I recorded this interview a little bit earlier this week. And with the shortened holiday week, we've been struggling to find a place to get Kaz into the show. But it's a good interview. We know you guys need to hear it. So we're going to be squeezing that in at the beginning of hour two today. Our sit down with Rick Kaczenski. So don't be confused when you hear Schmidt's voice. He's not here for 15 minutes. We have the ability to record, and we're going to use it today. So that's what we got coming your way. Already told you where you can contact the show. Remember, open phone lines most of the show today. The second half of each hour, really, 402-466-ESPN is where you can give us a call. And if you're listening from around the state, 800-825-5865. And, Bill, where I want to start this conversation is not college football expansion in terms of conference realignment. That's not where I want to start it. I want to start it off. Do you have your tickets for Mile High Nationals in Denver next weekend up at Bandimere?
No, but I should, because I met a new neighbor a couple of days ago walking my 32 pounds of Savage Fury Shaggy. And turns out my new neighbor is a hot rodder. A national guy, didn't get his last name, but Chris and his dad, they go to all the tracks. I'm a big race guy. I'm an IndyCar guy, NASCAR guy. I can appreciate F1. I've gotten into the motocross, the supercrosses and stuff like that. But I do like to watch the hot rods every now and then. And Bandimere is a great place to go. So you're right, I should. So I appreciate you offering to buy my tickets for me.
Well, I already got my tickets. I'm going to be there next Saturday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you've never seen they got the my dad was telling me maybe the pro stocks aren't coming this year. Those are fun ones, but they got the Top Fuel dragsters coming out. So I'm not sure. Have you ever seen those, Bill?
Once down in Houston. Yeah. It's a fascinating, event. to watch. Yeah, I'm with you. It's exciting.
And what's great about Bandimere is they got the open pits up there, so in between runs you can go walk through all these pits and get up close and personal with these guys rebuilding the engines, testing the engines out. They got to rebuild them after every single run. That's how powerful these things are. They end up breaking themselves after 3.5 seconds of being run at full juice. So they're back there doing their tests and rebuilding the engines. That's a lot of fun. And then the fastest quarter mile on earth. These you would not believe how loud these cars are. It's the loudest thing you will ever hear in your life. In terms of so loud, it's almost quiet because it drowns out everything else.
I should go get my neighbor. Just about a block away. Have him come over and talk some Top Fuel funny cars and stuff like that with you.
We'll save that for 540, I guess. Oh, I got some of the facts about the dragsters. I won't get into them. I'm not going to bore everyone at home, but some of those facts about those Top Fuel dragsters are just absurd. So if you never caught a drag race ever in your life, Topeka, for our residents around here, great place to go. Topeka, I believe that's in August. And you can still get tickets for going down to Topeka, and you won't be disappointed. It's a great time if you like any sort of auto racing. So that's where I'll be next weekend, Bill. So if you make the trek up, if you make the trek up,
I totally agree that's it's a spectacular show. And I said a couple of weeks ago, if there's a sport out there that the intricacies and the intelligence and the engineering and then the spit and shine. Just trying to figure it out on comments. Auto racing is it. Absolutely.
Well, Bill, the other thing that needs engineering and a lot of math and a lot of thinking is conference realignment.
Hey.
Yeah, it's been crazy here. And the question we're at right now is where do we go next? Both short-term and long-term. And there's a lot of unknowns surrounding that. We'll get into what Iowa Athletic Director Gary Barta had to say. Scott Docterman had some quotes from him that I saw on Twitter. So we'll get into that here in just a second. But it feels as though we're in a holding pattern right now. When you look at the grand scheme of college football, you would think, as Andy Staples said in his mailbag this week for The Athletic, you would think that if the Big Ten wanted Oregon and Washington, the Big Ten would already have Oregon and Washington. But on the other hand, if the Big Ten said no to Oregon and Washington would already have made their next move, whether it be going off to the Big 12, whether it be trying to aggressively expand into the Pac-12. You'd think there'd be more movement there than it is. So it would seem that those two schools are in a holding pattern, and maybe Notre Dame likes the attention, but as I see it here, the college football world is waiting on Notre Dame to make their move. And Notre Dame, for as long as they've remained independent, it doesn't seem like it's feasible for them to remain independent any longer with the way college football is moving. And the question to me becomes, is this going to be anything that's going to be resolved this offseason?
No, because I think the main players are satisfied with where they are right now. The main players being Fox, ESPN, the Big Ten, and the SEC. They don't need to do anything knee-jerk right now. They never had to do that. That's why, you were able to do Texas, Oklahoma a year ago, and you want to do USC, UCLA, like I said, a couple weeks or last week or something. You got 4 people around the card table, and they're going, what would you like to do? Well, I think, how about 2021, we'll take Texas, Oklahoma, SEC, and ESPN. Okay, that's good. How about in 2022, Big Ten, Fox, we'll take USC and UCLA. Okay, that's good. Why don't I say we take a break and walk around the block a little bit, smoke them if you got them, and then we'll come back and see, what else is going on in the destruction and the wasteland that is, outside of our little card game. So, yeah, I think, and Notre Dame is playing it like I think everybody would expect Notre Dame to play it. We are Notre Dame. We don't have to do anything. But at some point, I think everybody agrees they're going to have to, because I don't want to say the petulant child, but to me, Clemson is in the corner screaming up and down, get me out of here. Get me to the SEC. And I think that they're saying, oh, Clemson, just relax. We'll get to you like we did UCLA and USC. We'll get to you. Maybe it'll be next year, And Oregon and Washington have to wait up in the northwest corner to, for the Big Ten or the SEC. I just don't think that they're in any hurry. Now, to the credit of the leftovers, shall we say, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, as much discussion as there has been as to what they're going to do, what are they going to do, what are they going to do, we're just a week away from the USC-UCLA news, right? I mean, this isn't like this happened 3 months ago. This happened last week, or 2 weeks ago, whatever it's been. As much speculation as there has been, and as much wheeling and dealing as there's probably in discussions, they haven't made panic moves either. So, to their credit, now it looks like the Pac-12 is going to have its sweater completely pulled apart, and the ACC is going to be decimated. The Big 12 might be in a power position, but what people need, when you hear the discussion about the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big 12, well, that's going to be the third super conference. No, it's not. And they're going to find that out when the TV deal comes through. The Big 10 and the SEC, we all know, are going to get upwards of $100 to $120 million within the next 10 years, right, per year. When that next TV contract comes out for the Big 12, if it's the Big 12, let's say the Big 12 takes the best of the ACC and the best of what's left in the Pac-12, Oregon and Washington, 40, 50, maybe $60 million, right? So that's when you're going to find out that, yeah, you can call yourself a power conference, much like the Big 12 says, well, we're back to being, because we had UCF and Cincinnati and BYU. No, you're not the same. And they're going to find out when that TV contract comes up that you are not the Big Ten and the SEC. It's not going to be $100 million to you. So, all of that all that needs to be figured out. But they haven't made any panicked moves just yet. But I think the writing is on the wall for the Pac-12. And nobody talks about Wake Forest or Georgia Tech. Some of these schools, they're in the same boat on the East Coast as Oregon State and Washington State are on the West. I mean, those schools are not talked about at all. And nobody's talking about Duke. If you want to get an idea of how much college basketball matters, which is nothing, nobody is talking about Duke. Maybe Duke goes to the Big Ten, but it's all about football. And if North Carolina bolts for the SEC or maybe the Big Ten, what's Duke going to do? Are they going to join the Big East? Is that going to become the premier basketball conference in the country? Maybe. Maybe that's where Syracuse ends back up. And now you've got Duke, Syracuse, maybe Pittsburgh, Creighton, Kansas in the Big East Conference as like the lone basketball power conference. I don't know, but nobody's talking about some of those schools at all.
Bill, my question to you, this just brings up a thought within. We've heard people mention the fact that the move of UCLA and USC doesn't make sense for, say, the small non-revenue generating sports, the Olympic sports, the baseballs, the volleyballs, the men's gymnastics, women's gymnastics. It doesn't make sense for them. Could you see a conference system coming about which is completely separate from football as it is from all the other sports around, say? We heard from Gary Barnett yesterday on the show. He thinks the eventual way this goes is we're going to have one 40-team super conference, probably not in the near future, but in the distant future, one 40-team super conference of all the top players in college football, and then you have a couple conferences below that's everyone else. And from a football point of view, I think that makes perfect sense, and I think that is more than likely the way we're going, but it doesn't make sense for the other sports. So could you see schools specifically saying, let's take Duke for an example. They're going to go to the Big Ten for, say, basketball and everything else, but for football, the Big Ten doesn't want them, so they're going to remain in the ACC. Or Oregon and Washington, they go to the Big Ten for football alone, but in everything else they remain in the Pac-12. Is that viable?
I'm not sure that they would necessarily call themselves the Big Ten and the SEC and all that. Maybe those 48 schools. And again, thank you to Gary Barnett for listening to the Average Joe Sports Show in 2004. I was the one who talked about all this. I think that what you're going to see is maybe the NCAA stays in business as a governing body over all of the Olympic sports, that is protected in some way, and maybe you have conferences that are completely named completely different. But you cannot have all this stuff happening with Wake Forest traveling to Oregon State for conference matchups. It's just not possible. So I think that maybe the NCAA has some semblance of authority over all of that, but you're going to have to regionalize those sports. You don't have the money outside of those Power 40 or 48. And then, I just don't think you're going to go that way. Say you got to compete on a Tuesday or Thursday and come back and take your classes, wrestling and track and gymnastics. It does not make sense at all. And maybe that doesn't get decided until 5-10 years down the road.
There's Bill Doleman joining us.
It can't be where you're having Florida schools go to Oregon for midweek competitions.
Bill Doleman joining us on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Be with us the entire show today. We love our Fridays with Bill Doleman, and so thankful that Bill's willing to join us here on a Friday. So thank you, Bill Doleman. We'll have Jacob Padilla coming your way after the break. Thoughts from Iowa AD Gary Barta also coming your way. We'll have our sit down with Rick Kaczenski and a whole lot more coming your way on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We are presented by the Nebraska Lottery, and we'll be sitting down with Jacob Padilla next, talking some Husker basketball, Emmanuel Bandamel, and Huskers in the NBA. That's all coming your way next on Hail Varsity Radio.
Storm Chasers fans, suit up. My spidey senses are tingling. July 22nd is Marvel Night. While the ball players are wearing Black Panther jerseys, you too can be repping your favorite Avenger. My all-time favorite is Iron Man. Outside of the fact that he's downright awesome, his wit and sarcastic nature is similar to mine. So essentially, I am Iron Man. Thor will also make an appearance that night. When you say hi to him, make sure to say, "Doth mother know you weareth her drapes?" He loves that. Come be a superhero and watch the Storm Chasers take on the Iowa Cubs. Get your tickets now.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Back in on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman filling in for Chris Schmidt on a Friday as Schmidt's off watching the little guy play some baseball. And we'll have Schmidt back on a Saturday edition tomorrow morning as Schmidt out at Wilderness Ridge for the Team Jack Golf Classic. That's where he'll be. I'll be chained up in the studio, as I always am on these remote shows. And Schmidt will be on the link, so what's new? That's coming your way tomorrow, but Bill Doleman with me here today, and we're excited to be joined by Jacob Padilla. You read him on HailVarsity.com and Hail Varsity Magazine, covering Husker basketball and a whole lot more. And Jacob made it home just in time for this interview. And Jacob, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day on a Friday. So I got to ask, what had you so busy on a Friday that you were rushing home for this interview?
I just ran over to the store, pick up a few things. Got a tournament this weekend, so I'll be coaching in, watching a bunch of games. So need to pick up a few things before the weekend started. Picked up a few things. So how many hundreds of dollars did that cost you? Under 100. So it's not too bad. Well, that's good to hear. That it's been gas. I mean, even though it's going back down, it's the gas that's been crazy, and groceries have been crazy, and I digress. This is a sports talk show, but craziness. Jacob, I want to get into your story here to lead off on Emmanuel Bandamel. He's been a real wild card in my eyes for this Husker basketball team in terms of what he brings to the floor, because he doesn't seem like the traditional type of addition for a Fred Hoiberg offense. I know we're jumping right into this here, but Emmanuel Bandamel is a guy, he didn't come in with a whole lot of acclaim as a transfer, but I think as recent weeks and months have gone on, it seems like he's a guy that the Husker basketball team and Coach Hoiberg and company are planning on relying on this upcoming season. Would you say that's a fair assessment of what Emmanuel Bandamel brings to the court? I mean, he said it himself. He wants to go off and play in the NBA, and he thinks Nebraska's a good chance for him to reach that level. But do you think that a guy like Bandamel, with how he doesn't seem to necessarily fit with what Fred Hoiberg has been doing here in recent years, do you think he's a guy that Husker fans can expect to rely on in this upcoming season? I guess is the heart of my question. Yeah, I'll be interested to see just kind of where he falls into that rotation. And what his production looks like. I think they're bringing him in as a guy that can space the floor, shot about 35.5% from three this past season. He's a guy that played on a top 60 defensive team at SMU, and I think they're going to count on him on that end, just kind of be a two-way 3-and-D type of guard, although he wants to show he can be a little bit more than that. Like, that's what he's focusing on, tighten up his ball handling and his playmaking. He wants to have the ball in his hands a little bit more and kind of sees an opportunity for that within Fred Hoiberg's system where it's spaced out and you have multiple ball handlers, different guys have a chance to make plays. So I think that's what appealed to him when he went into the portal and started looking around. He talked to his coach, Tim Jankovic, who just got done at SMU, and talked to the new coach over there, Rob Lanier, just asking about the various coaches that were recruiting him and their systems and what they thought. And he really liked what he saw from Fred Hoiberg's offense on tape. So kind of sees himself as a good fit there, sees this as an opportunity to kind of grow and show a little bit more of his game and hopefully kind of appeal to decision makers at the next level, give himself a chance to have a pro career, whatever that may look like. And we'll see. Again, I think he's one of the three super seniors on the team with Sam Griesel and Derek Walker. So I think they're counting on him for a leadership from an experience standpoint to bring all those things. He mentioned how defensively he really likes to be vocal and make sure everybody's in the right spots and communicate and kind of just direct traffic on that end. And it's really important to have guys like that. You have to communicate well on the defensive end in order to be successful. And he's a guy that takes pride in trying to do that and making sure he brings everybody along with him.
Jacob Padilla with us here on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. You can find him on Twitter at @JacobPadilla_. And Jacob, you mentioned the three super seniors that are going to be on this Husker basketball roster the upcoming season: Sam Griesel, Emmanuel Bandamel, and Derek Walker. Bandamel, when he met with the media the other day, did mention the fact that while he hasn't been on the floor with Sam Griesel, he has been doing his research, studying game film of Griesel and figuring out how he can play to best, I guess, accent how Sam Griesel is going to be playing the game of basketball. And that's a kind of a mature response that you'd expect from a guy who's been playing a lot of college basketball and wants to make it to the next level. So do you think that the play of those three guys, Derek Walker, Emmanuel Bandamel, and Sam Griesel, are what's going to determine how successful Nebraska basketball can be this season? Or is it going to be the young guys, the Blaze Quietas of the world, and the guys you're not really sure what to expect from? Are those going to be the guys that are kind of your X factor this season and determine what kind of success Nebraska has?
Yeah, in order to take a leap forward, it's going to have to be both. And that's kind of what they didn't really get last year, where you had a guy like Bryce McGowan's come in and have a really good freshman year. But some of the veterans, like obviously Trey got hurt and Lat Mayen didn't perform up to expectations. And then some of the other guys, Wilhelm Breinbach got hurt too, but didn't look quite ready to contribute just too much before he got hurt. So the whole team just didn't come together, and they didn't have enough pieces to compete on a consistent basis. So they're going to need those seniors to set the tone, and those guys are going to have to be consistent and solid for them game in and game out. I think in order for this team to be good, you probably need Sam Griesel to be the best player on the team on a consistent basis. And that's not saying he's got to score 17 points a game, but he's got, whether it's points, boards, assists, he's got to be producing for you every single game. And then I think you're looking to get some good production out of that kind of two-headed center duo between Derek Walker and Blaze Queta coming in here. And listed as a sophomore, but he's got 2 years of junior college basketball plus a prep year, I believe, under his belt. So he's listed as a sophomore, but he's got about 4 years post-high school of development under his belt now almost. So, or 3 years at least. So I think you need to get some consistent post-production out of them. You need good play from those seniors on the wings. And then if a guy and I think you know what you're going to get from C.J. Wilcher to an extent. He's going to be a really good shooter. We're going to talk to him next week, it sounds like, and everybody's been raving about the work that he's put in physically on his body to kind of reshape himself and the weight he's cut, which I think should help him hold up better defensively and perhaps maybe create a little bit more out the bounce next year. But I think how good this can be, what does a guy like Denham Dawson or Ramel Lloyd Jr. or some of these other guys that you're going to be looking at to potentially fill out the rotation. What does Wilhelm look like coming off the injury? You're going to need those guys to fill out those 5, 6, 7, 8 spots in the rotation. And if you can't get to a full rotation of guys that can really play for you and help you, you're going to have a tough time winning games in the Big Ten.
Jacob Padilla with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jacob, let's shift gears here just a little bit and talk Huskers in the NBA. We've had NBA Summer League action going down for the past couple of nights, and you can mention all you want about Chet Holmgren. His first night, amazing. His next night after that, well, not so great on the defensive end. And, I mean, there's overreaction aplenty in NBA Summer League. That's kind of how the NBA Summer League goes. It almost feels like the point of it is for fans to hop on Twitter and argue about their new draft picks, about who's good and who's bad, and no one really knows anything. But we have got to see a guy in James Palmer play in the Summer League this year. And you've also had news in recent weeks of Isaiah Roby joining the Spurs. And it feels weird from my point of view being a guy to talk about Huskers in the NBA. That's not something that I've ever really been accustomed to in my lifetime based on what Nebraska has been producing out of that Husker basketball team since I was born in 1999. So while it feels a little bit different, I just want you to touch briefly on Isaiah Roby's fit with the Spurs, as well as James Palmer, and could he eventually make an NBA roster, or is he destined for a career of G League or Europe play? I mean, he's performed well in the Summer League thus far.
Yeah, I'll start with Palmer briefly. He played in a couple of games with the Utah Jazz over in the Salt Lake City Summer League over there, just kind of one of the little mini leagues that leads up to the big thing in Vegas, which started last night. He got a DNP in their last game. He started one game, came off the bench one, didn't play in another. So I think they're just kind of mixing guys in and out. He kind of looks about what he has been. He did some good stuff, but still struggled to be efficient. Ended up with, I think, more shot attempts than points. But he scored 9 and then like 12 or 14, I believe, in the second game. So I think ultimately he is a guy that the G League kind of making a nice career overseas is probably where he's headed. As for Roby, I do kind of like the fit in San Antonio, just in terms of what they have on their roster compared to OKC. He just ran into a numbers crunch. I think the Thunder liked him. They liked what he showed them last year, filling in with various injuries and DNP rest for the veterans they had on that team. He played really well down the stretch of the season, improved his three-point shooting percentage quite a bit, shot it really well this past season. So I think he established himself as an NBA player, but they've got so many young guys in the front court. And obviously they just drafted Chet in Jalen Williams from Arkansas as a second-round guy. And they've got a bunch of guys, Darius Basley, they had Jeremiah Robinson-Earl last year. And they still got Derek Favors in there as a veteran, Mike Muscala hanging around. So he just ran into a numbers crunch. They can't keep all their young guys. So I talked to Chris last week about it and said, yeah, they picked up his option for the next year, but I kind of felt like that was more buying them time to work out a trade. It just never felt like there was going to be roster space for him. Mm-hmm. Whereas San Antonio, you look at it, and they just drafted Jeremy Sohan in the lottery, so that's a young big coming back. But outside of him, they've got Jakob Poeltl, they've got Doug McDermott obviously is in there, they've got Zach Collins, and that's really all they've got in their front court right now. Outside of Sohan, most of their recent first-round picks have been in the backcourt, in guards. So I think there is some room for Roby there, especially if Poeltl has been a popular name on the trade market. If they work out a deal, I think they still got some roster spots to fill out. We'll see kind of what the roster looks like once we get to the season. But I think he'll have a chance to play there. And I believe they were 9th on the waiver wire. So I think there were a good number of teams that were interested in him. And San Antonio liked him enough to pick him up on his $1.9 million salary for this next year. He'll have a season, 1 year left on his deal here to kind of show San Antonio that he can be a part of the rotation moving forward.
Jacob, last thought here, about 15 seconds. What's on deck for the elite Padilla AAU team this weekend?
We're playing in our last tournament here at home, the Midwest Live over Council Bluffs, the field house. Teams had a great season. We'll get a chance to play 3 Minnesota teams and
And we got a rematch with a Supreme team from out of Lincoln with some really good players from down in that area. So looking forward to it. Should be a fun weekend, and then we spend our next 2 weeks on the road to close out July.
Jacob, good luck with that, and appreciate your time today here on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio.
I appreciate it.
Calling all soccer fans. Union Omaha is back home after an unbelievable showing in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup round of 16. An upset over Minnesota United? That's our team. So join them when they come home May 28th for Educational Outreach Night, presented by Bellevue University. The Owls will face Northern Colorado Hailstorm FC, and after a couple of road matches, will come back on June 18th to face Greenville Triumph SC. It's also Pride Night. We'll see you there.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Friday here. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Schmitty getting another Friday off, so it's the Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman show today, as Bill gracious enough to give us 2 hours of his time from the great city of Denver. Bill is checking in with us today, and you've heard Bill a couple times in the past month here on Hail Varsity. You know we love him on Fridays, and can't thank Bill enough for joining us here today as we talk a lot of conference realignment. We're going to hit what Nebraska's offense could look like next year with Matt Masker's comments with On 3, but conference realignment's been the topic here for Hour 1.
Real quick, if you're going to email Schmidt, you're not going to get a reply because he's about foot deep into 12 pack of Schlitz by now. So, forget that.
Well, you got to do it at the baseball field, especially in a day like today. I mean, it's actually not all that hot in Lincoln today. We had the thunderstorms roll through last night, and not sure how well you know the city of Lincoln, but we had like cars trapped in water because it was just downpoured for like an hour. So it's been a humid one today, not as hot as it actually feels like outside. But yeah, Schmitty enjoying his Friday off. He'll be back with you on a Saturday edition, 7 to 9 here locally on ESPN Lincoln as he joins us from the golf course Wilderness Ridge, the Team Jack Golf Classic tomorrow morning. And Schmitty will be with us there, but he's got the day off today. Before we get out of here this hour, I want to discuss some of Gary Barta's comments today. This comes from a news conference on Friday. Scott Dochterman with The Athletic reporting on it. And Gary Barta, not convinced the Big Ten is looking to add more members, at least here in the short term. His quote, "Will there be more? I don't have a crystal ball. But at this point, I can tell you the Big Ten is still not seeking members. I know the Big Ten is taking calls, and they inform us when they take calls just so we have a general idea. But again, I don't envision expansion. If I were predicting, I'm not predicting that we would be adding any more in the near future." So, after what we discussed in the first segment, I mean, that kind of goes right along with what you said, Bill, with the fact that we are in a holding pattern and there isn't urgency. And Gary Barta seems to echo that. And Gary Barta's been a pretty good voice for the league here, despite the fact he is at Iowa. Gross. Throwing personal opinion in here, why not? But Barta's a guy who's been around the game for forever and understands it, and he's a trustworthy source of information, at least within the Big Ten Conference. And Barta said he won't talk directly about any one school and doesn't envision any expansion either. That's won't talk about any one school when asked about Notre Dame. So, Bill, your response to that, I mean, kind of goes right along with what we were saying back in segment 1.
Well, yeah. Thank you to Gary Barta for this. Appreciate it. I don't think it has to do anything right now. They didn't do anything a year ago. Texas and Oklahoma made its decision, right? They waited a year. And now you've got an opportunity to take a look at the landscape to see what is the Pac-12, Big-12, and the ACC's reaction going to be. And they haven't made a knee-jerk reaction just yet. So my guess is that somebody's going to do something. When that happens, I don't know. We all know that if Notre Dame falls, the Big Ten or the SEC, which I just don't see that happening, the Big Ten will take that phone call and say, when can we send the moving victims? Right? So Yeah, I don't think they're going to do anything right now. They don't need to do anything right now. And especially with Notre Dame being independent, the only real tie that Notre Dame has is NBC. And my guess is Notre Dame could say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do, Big Ten. And now we're going to go do it. But where I care looking to go was saying I didn't think the ACC would get decimated. And I think that that's probably going to happen. So there really is no landing spot for Notre Dame to find the ACC in the future. And most of all these contracts with the Oklahoma, Texas going to the SEC, with UCLA and USC going into the Big Ten, all this is going to happen in 2 years. This isn't happening at the start of this college football season. So there's still some time for Notre Dame to make that decision. And when they do, when all the parties get together, the announcement will be made. But nothing that the Big Ten or the SEC has to be done immediately. And they've got to tell Washington and Oregon, yeah, maybe we'll call you. Maybe we won't. So if you want to go get into the Big 12, okay. Maybe you don't sign a long-term contract. Same might be said of some of the schools down in the Southeast with the SEC, although I'm sure that if they decided the SEC, they'll all go. But I don't think those who are in charge have to do anything knee-jerk reaction anymore. They've already proven that with the Texas, Oklahoma, and UCLA and USC.
More from Gary Barta's press conference today as he discussed scheduling in the Big Ten Conference, saying it's likely that divisions will go away, but it's too soon to say how scheduling will take place with USC and UCLA joining the league. So the scheduling is up in the air. It is likely, though, that he believes that the division system will go away, but that is not until USC and UCLA join in 2024. Specifically regarding Nebraska, he says, I'm going to fight for as many rivalries as I can get. Mentions 4 in that category that he would like to keep around: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Northwestern. So we're getting the protected rivalry topic, which has been so emphasized here. And Bill, with about 90 seconds left here, we're testing, seeing how our audio is here, and going to pose a question to you, and this is how we're going to test it out. Do you think college football stays in a 12-game format in their season? Because when you're looking at the fact that you might have an 18-team conference, a 20-team conference, Iowa's here saying we have 4 rivalries we'd like to protect. The math isn't adding up in terms of how you're going to be able to get all those games in. So do you see a situation where the powers that be extend a college football season to say maybe 14 games? Because with every game you add, you're adding more TV revenue, and there's been the argument for a long time that you can't do that to the college kids' bodies, but the NFL is already expanding games. We've discussed how this new college football format is moving more towards a system like the NFL, more like a pro format, where if you're adding more games, it's only generating more revenue, and the dollars and cents are what's driving college football right now. And that's where my mind goes. Do you go to, say, 11-game conference slate with 3 non-conference games and make it a 14-game season?
I still say the college football business model is going to have a union challenge at some point. Whenever the NFL talks about expanding, it's all about television, but professional football has the union to at least fight for them. Even though they add games, they still have the union fighting. For college football players, when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, somebody is going to tell those players, you need somebody looking out for you, and there is going to be union talk with college football. It's just going to have to happen, especially if you tell them we're going to have 13, 14, 15 games. And what's happened to the bowl system? Nobody's talking about the bowls at all in this whole mess, right? So I'm just telling you, there's going to be labor issues with college football before they can expand to 20 games.
There is Bill Doleman with us on a Friday edition. We'll wrap up hour one of Hail Varsity after this. Coming up next hour, we'll also have our sit-down with Rick Kaczenski from earlier this week. That's all coming your way later on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Friday edition of Hail Varsity here. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery. It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman talking some conference realignment here in hour one. We'll hit Nebraska's offense coming up in hour two. Also got a sit down with Rick Kaczenski coming your way, leading off hour two. That's about 10 minutes away. But Bill, I think, had more points to make here about this discussion of expanding a college football season, extending it to, say, 14 games, getting enough conference games, up in that money for a conference and how much money you're going to be getting back. So, Bill, I think you were saying to me that you had another point you wanted to make on this. So, the floor is yours.
I know that the issue with the number of games and the amount of money and all of that. What are college football fans going to do when the union talk starts to percolate? And I cannot believe that when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, that somebody is not going to convince these players who were convinced, a decade ago, to start going after their name, image, and likeness. Look what happened. They got it. Now you're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars in television revenue coming to universities. Somebody's going to tell them, look, you need to get your share of that pie too. And then you're going to get into, and that's probably a decade away when that money starts to be realized. What are college football fans going to do when you start hearing the terms collective bargaining agreements, strike? It's going to be, if we're moving in this direction with those 40, 48 schools, you're going to have political issues that start to percolate and become a part of the conversation. It's just the way it is.
It's Bill Doleman with us here on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Before we get out of here this hour, a quick reminder that nearly 70% of people in fatal crashes in Nebraska are not wearing a seatbelt. If used properly, a seatbelt can reduce the risk of fatal injury by up to 60%. Your best defense in any crash is to buckle up. A message brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Transportation Highway Safety Office. So a lot coming your way in hour two. If you missed anything in hour one, we had a sit down with Jacob Padilla talking a little bit about Emmanuel Bandemil, Sam Griesel, some Huskers in the NBA. If you missed any of that, it'll be posted up shortly here on ESPNLincoln.com. And you can also check out the full show in its podcast form. The Hail Varsity YouTube page is a great way to check that out. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you really like to get your podcasts, you can do that there. You can also stream us live, ESPNLincoln.com, the iHeart Media app, TuneIn Radio, Odyssey. The opportunities are endless for you to stream Hail Varsity Radio. So any way you like to listen to us, we like to serve the people and do it in that sense. So check that out and check out the full Hurrdat Media family of podcasts as well. Schick and Nick, the Straight Up Breakdown, the Varsity Club podcast, the I-80 preview, all of those available. Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. So make sure to check those out. Leave a rating, subscribe. We appreciate it. We'd love to hear back from you. We'll have our sit-down with Rick Kaczenski coming your way after the break. It's a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Shaking off the cobwebs post 4th of July. We say hi to the coach, Rick Kaczenski, with us, Nebraska and Iowa, of course. Kaz, did you light the neighborhood up? How are you?
Hey, man, how are you? No, not me, brother. I'm cheap. You know, I'm not going to spend my money on dumb stuff like that. I'll let other people entertain me. But, yeah, it was some people spent some dough. So I just sat on the back porch and watched everybody else light their stuff off, watch their money go up in the air and disappear.
That's the way to do it. I threw on Zero Dark 30 and crawled into bed after I had way too much steak and ice cream. We had homemade ice cream and fired up the steak, fired up Dad's grill, and got her done that way. And now we're back and off and running with recruiting. And I wanted to get your take on this. Nebraska and Mickey Joseph have done a really good job hitting some of the targets that they're going after, specifically at the skill spot wide receiver for Mickey. But I wanted to get your take on if it's between two guys and a guy that might not play the best competition but just crushes it. Do you, I guess the long and short, your eyes don't lie no matter who a kid's playing. Is that fair? If a kid's...
Yeah. I mean, you know enough. You're around. You see so many kids. You know the formula. You could make a hypothesis on if a kid's going to be successful. I mean, like we've talked about before, these high school coaches, they got small staffs. You got small towns. You don't have weight rooms. You got high schools that are small where all kids play 3 sports. So, then you got high schools like in Texas and Ohio and Pennsylvania where they got college weight rooms and their own strength coaches, so kids develop at a different pace. But when you put on the film, it's not necessarily what they're playing against. It's what they can do with their bodies. It's how they can bend. It's the twitch. It's how tight they keep their arms to their side. It's how they cut. Are they cutting straight leg? Are they cutting with their knees bent? Are they changing directions? How many steps does it take? Is there false movement? So, quite frankly, you're not even looking at the opponent. You're watching the kid you're recruiting. And really, if it came down to two guys, usually you don't have both guys. That rarely happens. So if you have both guys that want to come, all the staffs I've been on, you take them both. Because they'll help you. They'll help you some way. Like Coach Joseph, a lot of the guys, I'm sure he's recruiting that receiver. It probably won't end up playing receiver. But that's a good thing because if you don't make it at receiver, there's a lot of positions you can go. And when you look at the different positions, that's why you don't want to miss. That's why I know Vinny Serrato, when he was at Notre Dame, and Coach Holtz and Joe Moore, rarely did they recruit a true offensive lineman, because if you were an offensive lineman and you can't play offensive line, that's the end of the line right there. Offensive linemen don't get moved to defensive line. That just doesn't work like that. But you see linebackers move to D-line move to tight ends, move to offensive linemen. So the hardest position, in my opinion, is to recruit an offensive lineman that's ready-made, that plays one sport. Those are the guys that, man, you better do as much homework as you possibly can. But when it comes to skill guys, if you got skill guys that put their hand up, man, you take as many as you possibly can, because they're going to help you somewhere on the field on either side of the ball. And special teams.
Absolutely. Rick Kaczenski is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, what about specialization? In our household, I discourage specialization as young as he is, so I still want him to play ball, football, and baseball, and if he's not going to do basketball or make basketball, at least do pickup basketball. that type of thing. What's your thought here? What's the crossover with track and field, some of those spring sports, and also wrestling when it comes to finding a multi-sport football player?
Well, I come from an era where you played 3 sports. It was a no-brainer. And weightlifting, especially in high school, most high school guys have absolutely no idea what the hell they're doing. Strength and conditioning has become a science. Nutrition has become a science. It's changed so much. You just don't have, guys that train guys that were big lifters in college and strong guys. Now it's become so scientific. That thing's changed. You don't have that in high school. So, I think become a better athlete. You can always make a guy stronger. You can't make a guy more athletic. Your window for making a guy more athletic, for honing in on the hand-eye coordination, all the sports. I talk to my son and my daughter about this all the time. My daughter's playing tennis, volleyball, track. All those sports are going to make her better at each sport. My son playing baseball, you're bending at the knees, you're bending at the hips, hand-eye coordination, moving laterally, false movements, basketball, defensive slide, and running up and down the court, changing the direction. That's just going to make you better. What I don't like about the specialization, I think there's a lot of overuse with body parts. Mm-hmm. And I know I saw this as I stayed in coaching, as I got a little bit long in the tooth in coaching, which you saw a lot of high school kids coming in that needed minor surgeries. Nothing major, but there was so much wear and tear because they're not being trained by professionals. I mean, these guys are doing a good job in high school, but there's just overuse. And it's overuse of the same body part. And when guys play just football or just basketball or just baseball, what I don't like about it, there's a big portion of the year that you're not competing. If you just play football and you're an offensive lineman, how the hell are you going to get better and more athletic, doing things on your own? I mean, let's go to a gym. You're going to work a little bit harder in group settings than doing things. If I'm working out in my house or I go to CrossFit, I damn for sure work a hell of a lot harder. There's things that I'm gonna cut short in my garage that I'm gonna finish at CrossFit, right? I mean, nobody's running 20 gassers on their own. You just don't see that. So what I don't like about guys who specialize is, one, it's the overuse, and then two, I think you take away some kids' athletic ability, and then three, you're not competing. If you're a football player and your season ends, let's say you have a great season and you make it to the playoffs, and say take Pennsylvania, you go into the second week of December. Now you got January, February, March, April, May, June, July. You got 7 months before you're competing again. That's the part of it that I don't like. You got 7 months where you're really isolated. You're not around. You might be around your teammates, but you're not part of it. You're not part of a team, right? So I hate when kids play one sport. I hate when kids stop playing one sport. My kids are playing 3 sports until other people tell them they can't play anymore. Period, end of story. I mean, so, I love gym rats. The kids that I was able to coach and the successful kids, I mean, you look at, you go down the list of guys, the guys at Iowa, they Fowler, basketball, Mike Daniels, he was a wrestler, track. You look at the Davis twins, track. You go down the list. You look at Baker Steinkuhler. I mean, these guys played multiple sports. Malik Collins, state championship wrestler. I just like when guys are competing. I hate when my kid is not competing. It drives me absolutely nuts. Right? I mean, that's what I hate right now about this daddy ball, right? I mean, you're a part of it, Schmidt. You've been a part of it. It's not okay It's not okay to lose, right? I don't care if they're just 11. I don't care if they're just 12. I hear that all the time from the parents and the coaches when they lose. Well, then why are you playing, right? I hate that. I hate that mentality. And that mentality, I think, creeps in, when you're playing one sport. And I think, too, hearing different coaches say different things. Like, my son had a pitching lesson, and I'm not some nut job dad with that stuff. I'm not, but there's a guy that works with them that played in the major leagues for a long time that thinks my son has a chance. So, there's things that he says that his coaches don't say. So he's hearing it from a different voice. He's hearing how to get to the same place, but taking a different path. And I think that you can see that, too, when kids play other sports. Guys coach different ways. They get different things from different coaches, and they learn how to compete, and they face different adversity, and they figure out how to overcome things, instead of just, working one-on-one with a personal trainer. I just don't like that, man. But so, if it's up to me, I'd make kids play 3 sports or at least 2 sports in high school. And the kids that I was able to coach and the names and the players that I think of that had long NFL careers and the kids that had great college careers at Iowa and Nebraska and South Carolina, I don't know if there's a single guy that played just one sport.
Rick Kaczenski is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, going to wind down on this. I don't know that it happened a lot for defensive linemen. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I think of kind of the quarterback tutors guys have gone to during the off season that aren't part of the program. Is that something that you found to be problematic, or you saw from the periphery as problematic, or as long as a kid's getting working at the college level, it doesn't matter? What was your take on that?
Well, I think my take on that, it's such a skill specific position, and I think most quarterback coaches that on the college level, a majority of them didn't play quarterback, right? A lot of them are coordinating, and they don't have that time to specifically work with them. Like I have a good friend of mine, Jeff Kilberg, and he took his son down to an elite 11 with Trent Dilfer. Okay. And Trent was able to work with him. Now he goes to Maine South in Parkridge, Illinois. Great program, if not the best program in the state of Illinois. And, they got great coaches there. But Trent can, once again, like I was talking about my son going with this major league guy, everybody's trying to get to the same place, but, man, this guy might know a path. He might know a trigger word. He might see something a little bit different and have time to hone in on that specific skill, right? What I like about these guys who specialize is the fact that it's not cookie cutter. And a lot of times position coaches, just because of the nature of the time that you have with your players, that you can't be around them all summer, that you can't see them throw all the time, is that, I don't want to say a cookie cutter approach, but you're teaching a lot of blanket basic things to the same kids, where what I've seen, and trust me, I was a guy, trust me, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I can't believe my old man would kick me in the shins if he was alive, if he knew I was paying for batting lessons for an 11-year-old, right? I'm like out of my mind. I should beat my own ass if I could. Same thing, but I have really embraced it because this guy's such a good coach. I recognize that my son is getting to where his travel ball coaches want him to get to, but this guy created an easier path for him to get there. It's not a cookie cutter approach. He's taking my son individually, breaking down his body movements and saying, okay, this is what you need to do. He's a big lefty. When you get that leg up, man, when you're getting that leg kick up, you got to drop. You got to drop that hand with that ball so you can open your chest up. Well, I'm like, okay, well, good Lord, that's easy. That makes sense, right? Well, I know his travel ball coaches, they're teaching 6 different pitchers. They don't have that time to take 6 kids and work with them individually in a 2-hour practice, right? So I'm not against that stuff, and I think it really helps those guys, and I think it helps recruiting too. I mean, you can't tell a kid now, especially a quarterback, that you don't want them working with that guy, or you don't believe in that stuff. So I think a lot of the quarterback coaches, a lot of the coordinators embrace that because these guys are getting skill-specific, individualized attention to their needs. So yeah, question, that's a long answer, but yeah, I'm starting to embrace those things, and I've come a long way. I've grown up, but I used to come from a school where everybody stinks. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing, except the coaches I coach with and the head coach that I coach for, right? But you got to open your eyes a little bit and be and see the big picture.
Love it. Coach Rick Kaczenski with us. Kaz, that was awesome. Good to get caught up and talk some development there. We'll check in next week, brother. Have a good week, and thanks for the time today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@hailvarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Friday here on Hail Varsity Radio. We just heard Schmidt and I's sit down with Rick Kaczenski from a little bit earlier this week as Kaz gracious enough to give us 15 minutes of his time, and it didn't necessarily fit with some of our shows in recent days, so we saved it for today, and glad we got to hear that. That was great stuff from the coach Rick Kaczenski with us here. A Friday news dump day. Should have expected at this point. We got Jacob Padilla about an hour too early. We'll get to that here in just a second. But first, Bill, I just want to add to something that we talked about in the interview there with Rick Kaczenski, and that was the aspect of specialization, especially among these high school athletes going and joining one sport. And I just want to throw out there, sport specialization in the way that Kaz is talking about it, where you're getting a guy who's away from competition for 9 months just trying to work and focus on it, that's a bigger deal for the guys that are future D1 athletes. It's a less big deal for an average Joe like me who's going out and playing high school football, and I was terrible at basketball, I was terrible at baseball, I was slow, I couldn't run track and field. Like, I specialized in football growing up just because it was the only thing I was good at. And what he's talking about with the importance of specialization, I think personally, I'm not the expert here, but I think it's more important for those future D1 guys because they're kind of showing, yeah, I can be good at this sport on my athleticism, not because I've been working 365 days a year for the past 5 years on my craft. I've been working for 3 months a year for the past 5 years on my craft, and I'm still this good at football. I think that's where the argument comes from me for the argument of you don't want specialization, because you want these guys that are future D1 athletes to go out there and get experiences in other sports and learn what kind of body motions are necessary in other sports and how that can translate over. But for an average Joe like you or me, I feel like that argument is a little bit less necessary, unless you got a kid who loves playing all these different sports, in which case there's no need to specialize. But for a guy like me who was a big kid, couldn't jump, couldn't really run, was pretty strong, but couldn't hit a baseball, could kind of throw a baseball, was not great at fielding a baseball, couldn't swing a golf club really. I mean, like the specialization for me was almost necessary because I was just bad. I wasn't gifted.
You know, one of the great things about growing up in small town Nebraska, and granted, I'm from the greater Fairbury metropolitan area, but nevertheless, is the opportunity to compete in so many different sports. And in my case, football, basketball, baseball. I was not a track guy, but you got to experience all that stuff. You got to experience, Friday night in Fairbury, and then Friday night in Crete, or Friday, Saturday in Hebron and Holdridge, and playing at home, and family and friends are all there in a small gym. It's packed, and if people remember the new building at Fairbury High that I played in was built in 1947. That was the new building. That was the new gym. And my buddy Ben Boyle, who played at York, used to say that his coach was that John Arnold at York back in the day. They used to shut off half the lights in the York gym because when they were going to Fairbury, the lights would be so dim because it was just basically light bulbs. It wasn't fluorescent lighting. But that's the charm of high school athletics in rural states and Midwestern states and small towns, that you get to compete and you get to enjoy the atmosphere and the bus rides and all of that stuff. And I feel bad for all of my friends who grew up in big cities and, they may have been decent athletes and may have started at a small town, but they were in schools where there's 3,000 kids, 2,000 kids, and you don't get the chance to compete and enjoy that experience and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the specialization of the athletes, the people that I think are most concerned that you specialize the athlete, it's the coaches of those special sports, the AAU coach, the club coach. You got to specialize or you're not going to get that college scholarship, meaning I'm not going to look good and I'm not going to be able to get those other kids to come into my program and get parents to pay me $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're not going to have access to the training staff that I've got at the gym down the block and on and on and on, because I've got a specialty program that's going to train your athlete to be a great baseball player and get that college scholarship. You don't want to play football. You don't want to play basketball. You don't want to run track. You need to specialize. And whether that's basketball and AAU and club and, kids playing 100 basketball games a year, more than an NBA schedule, or they're pitching, all these games and they're blowing out their arms by the time they get to college. Or, don't wrestle if you're a football player, or don't run track because you might get hurt. The ones who are most concerned about athletes specializing are the coaches who want the athletes to specialize. I've been around plenty of collegiate coaches in my life, in my career, and I would bet that 90% of them want the athlete who's a football player to wrestle or do track. Maybe not basketball, maybe not all of them, but just be involved. If wrestle if you can, because the discipline of wrestling and the conditioning is so important. Or track and field that keeps you in condition, in that spring time. And then you get into football, maybe 2 sports, maybe not 3 and 4. But most college coaches, male and female athletes, want those athletes in specialty sports. Terry Pettit built the Nebraska volleyball program on great track athletes, good basketball players, great track athletes, and kids who played volleyball in the fall. He built them on athletes in Nebraska, in Iowa, in Kansas, and every now and then you get the one player out of California or something, and now Nebraska's an international program. But to me, it's the industry of the club that demands specialization, not the high school coach, not the college coach. And the more you specialize and the more you enjoy competing and being with your friends and the competition and the rivalries, you are missing out on life if you think the only thing I'm going to do is pitch a baseball, throw a football, shoot a basketball. You are missing out on the greater part of what sports is all about, winning and losing.
And I'm a little bit closer to this, and I had friends in high school that did go down that specialization route where their baseball coach told them, hey, you can go D1 if you join my travel ball team, play 150 games this summer or something crazy. Or you're a great basketball player, you got to hit the AAU circuit this summer, and hey, quit the football team and we'll get some work in the gym this fall. The guys like that, they were great athletes in their own right, and they ended up specializing. I feel like for the most part, they ended up burning out. Where they had to do so much football year-round or so much baseball or basketball, whatever sport it is. They did it so much year-round. By the time they got around to going off to college and picking where they wanted to go, they realized, man, I don't have a lot of love for this sport anymore because I have just been grinding through, since I was 12 years old, I've been grinding on this sport day in, day out, and I'm tired of grinding on it. I want to be a kid. I want to be able to enjoy my life, and part of that is being able to go out and enjoy time with your friends. And sure, if you got a sport you love, if you're a parent sitting at home who's got a kid, there's a sport they love, they're a great athlete all around, as Kaz said, get them some specified lessons that they can do on weeknights while they're participating in other sports. That can be the sport that they focus the most time upon, but don't make it the only sport they play. That I can get behind.
But even if you compete year round and you play, let's say you're a Class B, Class C1 athlete in Nebraska, and you play football, and you show up in August and you play football until October, November, and then you've got that period of basketball and you play basketball, and you've got that period between basketball and track or golf, or then you play a little Legion ball in the summer. Even if you are competing year round, that's different than specializing year round.
Mm-hmm.
That's doing something different. It's working your body differently. And maybe you're not great at basketball, but you're a great football player. Or maybe you're not a great track athlete, but you can play a little golf, which is going to last you the rest of your life. At least you're doing something, and you're with your buddies, and you're staying in shape, and you're developing some discipline, and hopefully the academics are tied to that. There is so much. I don't worry about the year-round competition and year-round activity burnout. It's the burnout when it's one specific sport day after day after day. And again, it's, and I don't have a problem with club athletics. But when the club coach says you can't do that if you want to be in my club, and there are those, especially when I was down in Texas, where you're going to be a baseball player. Well, no, you're not going to play football. I want to play basketball. No, basketball season can't, because baseball season in Texas starts in December. You're not doing the kid any good, and you're going to burn him out. But if you play year round and you play all kinds of sports and have fun with it, that's the best. That's the best part about growing up in a small town, getting to do it all. And maybe one night you have a memorable game or something, or bus rides. That's what kids miss out on when they specialize.
Bill, before we get out of here this segment, let's get to our Friday afternoon news dump, which I haven't had a Friday afternoon news dump in a while, but they are more frequent than I expect. Like, getting into radio, wasn't expecting that 5 p.m. on a Friday, here comes all the Husker news. Shocking how much this happens, but it would have been nice to talk to Jacob Padilla an hour after we did, because about 30 minutes after we finished talking to him, Robin Washut with On3 Sports reporting that Husker basketball assistant coach Armand Gates will be leaving Coach Hoiberg's staff, headed for a similar job at the University of Oregon. And it's a full circle moment here a little bit, because Chris Crutchfield, who Armand Gates is replacing, left Dana Altman's staff over at Oregon to come take the head coaching position at Omaha. So Oregon loses an assistant coach, moving off to Nebraska, and where do they go to find their assistant coach? But the other school in Nebraska, the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Armand Gates, after 4 years in Lincoln, will be out the door, headed off to Oregon, and that leaves Hoiberg with a late spot he now has to fill on his assistant coaching staff. And Bill, it's one of those things, didn't necessarily see it coming. It sounded like Hoiberg liked what he had from Armand Gates. He's the only assistant coach that was retained from those Tim Miles years. And this close to the season, as we're in late July, it's a little bit out of the blue. However, it's going to leave Coach Hoiberg scrambling over the next couple of months to try to find an assistant coach he can use to fill that spot.
But, it's just the nature of the business. Mm-hmm. And when I was in Lincoln last year at this time and doing some radio with the university, Armand came on the show once or twice and got a chance to meet him, and just a gregarious, charismatic, wonderful guy. But you just knew, talking to him, that Nebraska wasn't his final destination, that his destination is to be a head coach one day. And part of the pathway to be a head coach in college basketball is you make a lot of stops along the way. And so in one opportunity, you're at the Big Ten school in Nebraska. Now you're going to the Mountain West in Oregon, or wherever they are, the Great Pac Conference or the Pac West. I don't know what they are. But look, if you can go coach for Dana Altman, and you've been with Fred Hoiberg, this is just the next stop, the next rung on the ladder for a guy like Armand, who will be a wonderful college basketball coach someday, head coach. And I wish him all the best. I really, really enjoyed him when I was visiting at Nebraska. So good luck to him, and no shock at all that he's finding another spot on his ultimate destination.
Bill Doleman, Technical Issues Resolved, is with us here on a Friday afternoon edition, Hail Varsity Radio. We'll be back with more after the break.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman taking you through this Friday edition. As Schmitty getting a Friday off today. Is good to get those days off now before the craziness of football season ramps up. We're just a couple weeks away from Big Ten Media Days, and then after that, just a few short weeks from Nebraska kicking off against Northwestern in Dublin. So Chris taking this Friday off. I'll be taking it next Friday off. And after that, I believe we are going to be pretty much gearing up, getting ready for football season. We got 1 week of shows, and then after that, Schmitty's off to Indianapolis. Indianapolis, I believe, is where Big Ten Media Days are this year. I don't know. I'm not the one going there. I'm not the one with the plane ticket. So he'll be off to Big Ten Media Days on that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We'll be bringing you some good content there, getting you some interviews from everyone in the Big Ten, plus all the Nebraska individuals that end up traveling out as well. And Bill, let you jump in here.
How many times do you think those coaches are going to be asked and don't want to be asked and refuse to answer the question about UCLA, USC, Big Ten expansion, and Notre Dame? I mean, those coaches are going to be like, don't ask. I'm not. It's going to be asked all over and over and over and over again. And there's going to be so many non-answers about Notre Dame. That's going to be kind of funny.
But it will be fun. I mean, like the college football eyes across the nation will be on the Big Ten Media Days for those couple of days just to see what kind of information can be gleaned. And Chris Schmidt is going to be on this scene there doing live shows. We'll have two of them from, I think it's Indianapolis, but if I'm wrong here.
Hey, it ought to be in Lincoln. Lincoln is the central hub of the Big Ten Conference, right? So why are you going so far east to Chicago or Indianapolis? I mean, you got to be right in the middle. And I tell people all the time, one of the best areas in the country right now is Omaha and Lincoln. It has gone so far into the current the current culture and with the arenas and the excitement, and I put Lincoln and Omaha up there with any place of its size in the country. So since Nebraska is right in the heart of Big Ten country, everybody ought to just come into town and hang out have it at Schmitty's backyard.
Well, I mean, up in Omaha they got that big the big event center right next to. Oh man, they keep on changing the name of it. What's the arena? It used to be the Quest Center, and they kept on changing it.
Come to Lincoln. Charlie Meyer will get them salt dog tickets.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Cross over the bridge and go down to the Haymark area. I'm sure they could probably have a high heel in the sneakers concert down at Oscars.
Mm-hmm. Nightcap at Barry's. All the Big Ten coaches meet at Barry's.
Yeah. At the Z table. I mean, come on. It's so natural now, And let me say this, though, in all seriousness. When people say, well, Nebraska can't recruit, those athletes in California are now looking east and thinking, oh, maybe the Big Ten, okay. And you start to say, hey, you could play in Lincoln and in the Big Ten and not have to travel all the way to Happy Valley, or I'm sure Rutgers is on their radar. But, the trip from L.A. and, those California kids might find themselves in Nebraska a whole lot more because they want to play in the Big Ten and not travel all the way across the country like they thought of it. Same reason why you've got a few more Texas kids maybe making their way up to the Big Ten. So this USC-UCLA thing might be pretty good for Nebraska recruiting in places like California and Texas. Don't be surprised about that.
Bill Doleman.
I'm right about everything else. Why wouldn't I be right about that too?
Bill Doleman with us, Friday edition, Hail Varsity Radio. Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman filling in for Chris. And Bill, just to get back to Big Ten Media Days for just a second, I'm sure there's going to be significant questions not only about Big Ten expansion, but specifically when you look at Nebraska, you got to think there's got to be a lot of questions about what that offense looks like. And as we get closer and closer to fall camp, I think that question is going to be answered. And Matt Masker sat down with Robin Wash of On3 Sports. What a day for Robin, as he had this story, and then also breaking the news on Armand Gates heading off to Oregon. But the quote from Masker that I think stood out to me, the question's been is how much is this offense going to be the Mark Whipple offense? How much is it going to be the Scott Frost offense? How much is it going to be mixed? We don't really know what it looks like, but Masker giving us a little bit of insight, a guy who's been with Scott Frost his entire tenure here at Nebraska, and he said he's definitely taken a step back, and it's been really hard on him. Masker continued, as you know, he's been the offensive guy. I know it's been hard for him to step away, but that's what he agreed to, and that's why he hired Coach Whipple. He agreed to, this is your show now. I'm the head ball coach, but I need you to bring in your offense, be in command of it, and run it. And Coach Whipple has done just that. And that's been the question is, whenever Matt Lubick came to Nebraska, you'll watch the offense and you went, okay, this is a Scott Frost offense with a different offensive coordinator being named. Like, it didn't look anything different. But as far as the X's and the O's, Masker says it's been Whipple's show from as soon as he stepped foot on campus, and saying that the quarterback play will be different, the passing game is completely different, and the quarterback will not be taking a beating as much. I'm going to try to hammer the passing game, and the running game will change greatly as well. So could be a completely different looking offense whenever Nebraska trots out onto the field in Dublin just a little over a month away from now. And I think that does kind of give Nebraska the advantage in that game, just because, as we saw with Illinois last year, I brought this up on the show a couple days ago, Illinois last year, was the fact that Illinois came out and surprised Nebraska. We didn't know what kind of defense they were going to be running. Their offense was a bit of a question mark. You knew it was going to have that Brett Bielema hallmark power run game, but you weren't quite sure what you were going to get, and Nebraska came out and was honestly surprised in the first half. And you got to wonder how long it's going to take these teams in the Big Ten to adjust to Mark Whipple's offense. How different is it actually going to look? Because you have multiple years of film on the Scott Frost offense, but say you're coming into week 5, you have 4 weeks of offense on tape, and there's really a lot in your bag that you can still come out and pull out whenever you need it. So if it is a completely different offense, I think it's advantage Nebraska with how last year's offense struggled to hide the deficiencies of the offensive line play, and how much it struggled to get a run game going, especially in the Big Ten. You bring in a seasoned veteran who's going to have different eyes for what the Big Ten is and what you need to do in the Big Ten. And while we don't know exactly what Mark Whipple's offense is going to look like, we're getting more clarity as we go on a week-by-week basis.
Well, first of all, it should not have mattered what Illinois did or didn't do, surprised. That never should have lost that game, ever. I don't care if they would have trotted out 14 players and played offensively and defensively. It should not have mattered that, we didn't expect that. Well, you know what? You should have executed on your side of the ball and not had a safety on a punt return, fumbled the ball at halftime and gave up a fumble 6 and all that stuff. So I don't care what Brett Bielema did. Nebraska should have won that game. It doesn't matter what they would have done. And if you want to look at what Mark Whipple has done, you just, pull up VHS tapes, DVDs, or streaming services and watch what he did at UMass, watch what he did at Pittsburgh. They don't have Kenny Pickett at quarterback or the receiver that's, I don't know where he has gone now, USC. You just look and you can see, okay, well, this is what he does. These are the tendencies, and this is what football coaches do. They break it down and they've got an idea. I don't want to say the most troubling comment that I saw in the article with Administrator Masker. I understand why he is the expert to go to because he's been around. But when he said everybody runs the same thing nowadays, well, great. Everybody runs. It's the NFL. It's all homogenized. Everybody runs the same thing. It's different terminology. Look, we were successful in the 80s and 90s, and I said we. When Tom made the decision to go to the option, and it was Oklahoma and Nebraska and the Air Force Academy and maybe somebody else running the option. And the reason why we were so successful is because teams did not see that but once a year. And then you had a team that ran it really well. So it's one thing to prepare for the option with a bad team and go, okay, well, we're bigger than them on their offensive line. We're faster. We can stop it. We'll get it done. Like Miami did to us a lot of times, right? They were just better athletes, and they were able to stop it. But when we got the players and the personnel and the quarterback and the offensive line and the defense and all of that, it didn't matter. And Tom even said that. It doesn't really matter if we tell them what we're going to run. We're just going to go run it and execute it. So when Matt says everybody runs it, well, okay, then it doesn't really matter how different Mark Whipple's offense is. Do you have the personnel to run it and run it effectively? Do you have the offensive line and the depth along the line to protect the quarterback and allow him to pass the ball? You know, it's college football has become the NFL, and Nebraska, who was outstanding, and I mean that an outlier from everybody else, along with Oklahoma back in those days. You know, that's what made it different. I had a conversation with Brady Hoke when he was at San Diego State and was a coach at Michigan in 1997, and we had a little standoff and stare off as to who would have won that game. And I said we would have won it because of the option. You know, and that's the difference. But if you're going to run what everybody else runs, you just better run it better than everybody else.
Up against the break here, Bill. Apologies to our affiliates. We went a little over there, but I wasn't going to cut you off. You had good stuff there. So we will wrap up a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio after the break right here on ESPN Lincoln and for our affiliates across the state, Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, Columbus. We love you all.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. And I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wrapping up a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman filling in for Chris Schmidt here on a Friday. Chris will be back in for the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. If you're one of our listeners from across the state or even from outside the borders of the great state of Nebraska, you can catch that in podcast form. That will be up on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, the Hail Varsity YouTube page as well. You can also stream us live, ESPNLincoln.com, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Media, and Odyssey. A lot of great options for you to stream us live on a Saturday morning edition if you're not from around here. Bill, before we get out of here, I've saved your favorite topic for last. Just one quick recruiting note to hit before we get out of here. Cameron Linhart, 4-star from down in IMG, plays that defensive end spot. Talented kid. He has included Nebraska in his top 3, and it's got some Big Ten juice. Nebraska, Michigan State, and Penn State are the top 3 for Linhart. I've saved it last because Bill Doleman's giving me the sarcastic fist bumps all the way from out in Denver, so I've saved that for last, but Cameron Linhart has included Nebraska in the top 3. It's interesting. He's a guy who's off at IMG, meaning he is specialized in the sport of football, and we hit that earlier with Kaz. If you missed that, catch it, ESPNLincoln.com. You can also check out Jacob Padilla's interview, ESPNLincoln.com, or check out the full podcast, the places I mentioned earlier, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, the Hail Varsity YouTube page. We'll be back with you on a Saturday. Thanks for tuning in today. Bye now. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you in the morning.
A Hurrdat Media Production.